Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host, The Unhinged Father, and this is the Unhinged Father podcast. Possibly a little bit of a shorter episode this week. Not going to lie. Past week and a half has been a little crazy for me and my family, but we'll jump into that in the episode. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, just as a forewarning, I am on a minimal amount of sleep right now. My youngest son actually both of my kids got sick the night of 4th of July. They both woke up with croupy coughs in the middle of the night. But my younger one had a real bad respiratory issue going on where we actually had to take him to urgent care over the weekend, get him breathing treatments, and make sure that he was getting enough oxygen and that it wasn't some sort of lung infection. It's the first time that we've ever had really a child that's had issue breathing to where we could see the laboring of his breath. And because of this, he hasn't been sleeping well very much for 5, 6, 7 days, which means that dad hasn't been sleeping well for 5, 6, 7 days. But the lack of sleep aside, the thing that I actually wanted to use what we're going through right now to talk about a subject that is kind of vulnerable for me, something that is difficult to talk about because when you have kids, you never want to see them hurt or in danger or anything like that. And this past week, I really had some fear creep into my life, creep into my mind, some intrusive and dark thoughts plowed their way in. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, was just diving into that fear that you have as a father and what it looks like. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, you know that a lot of times I like to focus in on how to make myself better, how to make myself stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally. All of these things are what I focus on in the podcast when it comes to myself. But this is something completely different. When you become a father, you can't control everything, unfortunately. There are things that will come into your life that you have absolutely no control over, and they will pose a threat to you and to your family. And for me, that's absolutely terrifying. I have this real guttural fear of anything ever happening to my children, especially on my watch. I have a very strong protective instinct when it comes to anyone that I care about. But when it comes to my children, it's on absolute hyperdrive. I try my best to tamper that back so that way they can learn and grow and, figure life out from the mistakes that they make. But I try to do it within a controlled environment so that way they're never in any real true danger, but they could just have these little bumps and bruises along the way that are going to teach them and prepare them for life when it actually does happen to them outside of this controlled environment. But no matter how strong you are, no matter how many precautions you take, you truly can't control everything in life. There is no true controlled environment. And that's something that I'm coming to grips with as a father. And it's really difficult. It's hard for me to accept the fact that I can't always keep my kids safe. And my son's fine. He's not in any mortal danger. He's actually feeling way better. I've been at home with them this week. I've had to take a couple days off of work, and he's back to running around the house, smacking me on the chest, giving me, the little Viking chest bumps that he does all the time. He's a crazy one. But over the weekend and a couple of nights, just feeling his little body in my arms when I'm holding him and rocking him and just feeling that struggle for breath coming in and out of him, it's scared the shit out of me. It's I can't really control what's going on here. I can't control this illness. I can't control his body's response. And I'm not the one in that situation. I have this weird mentality where I think that, if anything ever happens to me, I'm strong enough to withstand it. I'm mentally strong enough. I'm physically strong enough. Nothing is ever going to take me down. And that's just a mentality I've had for a long time. Is it true? Probably not. I'm sure that there are a lot of stuff that really can take me down, but I just always go into a situation thinking that I'm going to be okay. But I can't put that on my kids. I don't know how they're going to respond to these things. And as much as I like to think that they're little mini versions of me, that's not always the case. And I don't know if they're going to fight like I do or if their body's going to be okay. And it just is terrifying. It's so scary because there's no control and you have to just let it go and trust that everything is going to be okay. And sometimes it's not going to be okay. And this isn't just for when your kids get sick, right? It could be your kid falls off a bike, they hit their head, they run into the middle of the street, they do something stupid. There's a lot of things that can happen to your kids in this world. I joke about it, but essentially your job as a parent is to make sure that you keep your children alive long enough to get them to adulthood to where they're not actively trying to kill themselves. And it's hard for me to acknowledge that fear aspect of it, that scared little part of me that is afraid that I'm going to lose my kids or something's going to happen to them and I will have failed them. And so a lot of times I react in anger, and I'm sure a lot of you do the same thing, right? Kids run into the street and you're, what the fuck are you doing? Get back over here. Or, they run around and they hit their head and you're like, oh, I told you that you shouldn't do that. And you take these little bits of, like I said, anger comes out, or sarcasm or humor or any of these other things besides the fear that's really driving it underneath. Why are you saying all these things? Because it's easier for you to express, or at least in my case, I don't know, maybe you're perfect and you can cope with your emotions. But for me, anger is the easiest emotion for me to feel. It's the most readily available at any given time. And even though the fear is the underlying emotion, anger is what comes out to my kids. And that doesn't necessarily do anything good for anyone, right? Your kids are just going to be afraid, right? There's certain circumstances where that anger, that quick twitch anger response is a good thing. You don't want your kid to go into the street. You yell at them. They come back to the sidewalk, and then you can have the conversation on why they shouldn't do that. But a lot of other times there's things that they can't control, and you still respond in anger or humor or whatever, some sort of not necessarily appropriate response or emotion. And I talked about how sometimes we need to just accept that things are going to happen the way that they do. And our job is to learn how to accept that for ourselves, right? But at the same time, you don't just accept everything. It doesn't mean you just have this laissez-faire attitude about everything. Your job as a parent is to keep your kids alive, to keep them happy, to keep them safe. Take that back. Not to always keep them happy, but to keep them safe, alive, thriving, learning, all of these things. And it's our job as adults when things get rough or when there's something that's scary to not let that emotion, that fear come screaming out in anger or any of those other inappropriate emotions. But we also don't want fear or panic to take over as well. We need to stay calm, stay present, and stay strong for our kids because they're looking towards us. And if we lose our shit, they're going to be like, oh, fuck, we are screwed because my dad is losing his shit and he never loses his shit. I'm going to fucking die. So I think what I wanted to acknowledge here was the fact that we can have this underlying fear, and we as adults should be able to go back and acknowledge the fact like, hey, I'm afraid. That's why I'm responding this way. Or like, I love my kids so much, and this fear is driving me to certain behaviors that I'm doing to certain angry outbursts or to be more terse with my children. We need to be able to acknowledge that on our own, but it's not like something that you just let I think this is kind of a common misconception within society right now, is that like, yes, we want to be kind to ourselves. We want to acknowledge our own emotions and we want to be in tune and mindful with ourselves. But that doesn't mean you just drop that shit off all at your kids' plate. They're not old enough to fucking understand that yet. And even though you can acknowledge some fear, like, hey, daddy was scared or daddy was this, you can't drop all of that stuff on them. You can't drop your emotional baggage onto them. And a lot of times people are like, well, I want to be honest with my kids. I need to acknowledge my feelings. Dude, you're the fucking adult. You're the person who's already grown up. You're supposed to have some sort of emotional control and be able to be that strong, calm, supportive figure for your children. So that way they can grow up and pass that along to the next generation. So I'm not here to dog on you and say, hey, don't feel the fear. Don't get angry. Don't any of those things. But at the same time, don't go the complete opposite where you just become this toxic parent who drops more than your children are ready for at their plate. Let them be kids for as long as they possibly can. And yeah, that's where I've been this past week or so. Sleep deprived, dealing with this fear, seeing my kid, seeing him struggle to breathe, trying to figure out how can I stay calm? How can I respond appropriately, but at the same time, not to just try and brush over and be like, oh, he's fine. He'll get over it. Like, it was a serious thing. Would he have eventually been fine? Probably, but I don't know that. It could have been a trip to the ER at 2:30 in the morning with a bunch of drunks and drug addicts that I really didn't want to fucking take. So we took some precautions, took him to urgent care. They got us the breathing treatment, and he responded really well to that. So I think that we responded appropriately to it, but it has been something that I've been struggling with, and something that really has kind of come to my attention is this baseline fear of, one, not being strong enough for my kids, but at the same time, needing to let myself know that it doesn't matter how strong I am or how prepared I am. Sometimes shit is going to happen and I'm going to see my kids struggle, and I've got to be able to come to a place where I can let go of the things that I can't control and then focus on the areas that I can control. Not completely let go, but let go of the things that I have no control over. So that way I'm a more functional adult for my kids and for myself, for my entire family, anyone who's around me. So that way I'm not just some big piece of shit who's angry all the time. And I don't know if this is just me. I'm sure that other parents get scared and they go through a lot of worse things, right? This was just a small virus that our son responded to not very well, had the struggles with breathing. But there are parents out there who have to deal with, and I don't even like throwing this in the atmosphere. It's something that just scares the shit out of me. But children who have early rare diseases or cancer or giant accidents where they just get hurt terribly. These are all things that I'm constantly afraid of, trying to be vigilant of. And to some extent, I'm almost like trying to pull a veil over my eyes, thinking that like if I become stronger or better, then I should be able to protect my family from this. And I guess I'm just trying to say that you can't always do that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try to protect and help your kids grow up in a safe and controlled environment to whatever extent you can. But it also means you need to be able to accept the fact that there are going to be things outside of your control and give yourself a break on that. And that's where I'm at right now, struggling with it, but trying to move on and make sure that I can be the best dad I can be for my kids and for my family. And in the words of the immortal Forrest Gump, that's all I got to say about that. And since this is a little bit of a shorter episode, I'm pretty sure that my son's waking up right now. He's at home with me. I don't have a lot of time. I'm trying to squeeze in this recording as fast as I possibly can. But another thing that popped up from last week, a little bit on a lighter note here. Last week was obviously 4th of July. I hope that you listened to the Are We Proud to Be American Still episode from last week. If you have not listened to that, go back, give it a listen. I think it's an important message. But one thing that popped up is that we always talk about the best holiday movies that come around, and 4th of July is one that I don't really feel has a ton of nominees when it comes to what's the best 4th of July movie to watch. You know, you've got a couple of ones that pop up, right? Independence Day is one that I think is possibly a good 4th of July movie. Born on the 4th of July, which I've never even seen. Hopefully that doesn't get me in trouble here. Independence Day Resurgent, which is the second one, which I don't think anyone has even seen. I'm seeing Jaws here. I'm looking at a list of the best 4th of July movies to look at. I mean, you got An American Tail with Fievel, Hamilton, Glory, Saving Private Ryan, all of these ones. A lot of them are like war related or just like America, fuck yeah type things. America World Police, that might be a good one. But for me, when it comes down to the brass tacks, I think that the top movie, you can fight me on this, for 4th of July is The Sandlot. And I know that the 4th of July scene is only like 14 seconds long, but you can't tell me that watching that scene doesn't make you think about your childhood, especially if you're a millennial, seeing the fireworks in the sky, hot dog stands out on the street, Hamilton grabbing as much as he can, and then everyone just looking up into the sky, seeing those fireworks going off, Ray Charles in the background, possibly the best 4th of July scene ever. And for me, that's the reason why I think that The Sandlot is the best 4th of July movie to watch. Kind of got a summer vibe, kids, baseball, hot dogs, The Beast, Hercules, The Great Bambino, all those things rolled into one. So if you were looking for a good 4th of July movie to watch and you've never seen The Sandlot, get off your ass, go stream it, and remember, heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Follow your heart, kid. And that's going to do it for this week's episode. Hope that you all enjoyed it. Like I said, try to get a little bit of something out. It's been difficult. I haven't had any time whatsoever in the mornings or during the day. I've been with my kid basically day and night, taking care of him. He's going back to school here soon, hopefully. But that's what I'm struggling with right now. If that's something that you've struggled with, or if you can empathize with it, or you have some thoughts on it, let me know. Shoot me a message. Let me know your thoughts on this episode. If you enjoyed it, give me a follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasting needs met. And truly, if you feel like this content would be helpful to someone, or you think someone would benefit from hearing what this millennial average Joe dad has to think about certain topics, send it to him. It's real easy. Click the share button, send it to him in a text or an email. I really appreciate you getting the word out there. But yeah, other than that, I hope that everyone has a fantastic rest of the week. Have a great weekend. And as always, be good, try hard, do your best.